RVCA. Welcome, sir. Let me take a few minutes to introduce our chief guest for the day. Architect Aparna Narasimhan is a partner and design director at Venkataramanan Associates, a leading architectural practice with over 32 years of experience. In her position, Architect Aparna guides the firm's design process and critical review sessions. A keen artist and proponent of art appreciation, she maintains a strong emphasis on drawing by hand as a design tool. As co-founder of Kadambari, an organization that is involved in the promotion of performing arts and fine arts of India, Architect Aparna has organized several exhibitions and workshops on traditional Indian textiles, arts and crafts. Her work, which is dominated by residential and institutional projects, is characterized by an ability to straddle complex parameters and feasibility studies, a good understanding of context, and a design process that displays knowledge ranging from master plan level decision making to minute design detailing. Aparna's design rationale is highly objective and user responsive. She often revisits completed projects to observe firsthand the impact her design has on human behavior. Her award-winning works continue to garner national and international attention. Her allied interests in art and craft have had her designing sets for the theatre productions. She believes in reciprocating knowledge and sustains a healthy interaction with students through talks and workshops. Let me highlight a few of her accolades. She's been awarded the Architect of the Year Award in 2012 by JK Cement for her project Art Village, the Valley School, Bangalore. She is also the recipient of the Best Private Resident Award by JK Cement again for Chitra Kumar Residence in Bangalore. She's been a recipient of A+D Spectrum Architecture Awards for Best Institutional Building in the year 2002 for the Science Centre in Valley School, Bangalore. She's also the winner of A+D Spectrum Special Mention Award for Best Institutional Building in the year 2003, St. Joseph's Arts and Science College, Bangalore. We welcome you, ma'am, and thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to be with us here today. I would humbly request you to grace the session and share your thoughts.
Aparna Narasimhan, and I'm a partner at Venkataramanan Associates. It's an old firm in Bangalore. It's more than 50 years old now. And I'd like to thank Professor Bhavne for inviting me for this important occasion, and like to thank all the audience present here, the freshers and their parents. And it's nice to be among people that I'm familiar with. Professor Anuradha Dinesh is there, Professor Sridhar, and Professor Girish, who I've met after such a long time. A lot of familiar faces. Professor Bhavne, of course, when I graduated from Manipal, he had just about joined, and we did a class. I think he took a class for us. So it's nice to, although he's, I'm the one with grey hair, not him. So it's nice to meet Professor Bhavne again. So let's do it. First, let me understand the audience. I think there are about 3 sections of first year here, so there might be about 50 to 80 students here, am I right? Yeah. So I'd like to know how many of you took up this profession, because they felt that they are creative and they have this talent for drawing and the arts. And how many, let's say a show of hands. Could you raise your hands? How many of you took up this profession because you wanted to? That's a sizable amount here. That's nice to know. And how many of you, CET counseling is what guided you towards, and this seemed to be the logical option? How many of you, can I see some hands here? Yeah. Not all, are you shy? I mean, it's perfectly all right. Almost half the class in my section was like that. I mean, they all took up because they were guided by CET. So can I see a show of hands there? It's perfectly all right. Yeah. So it's clearly the perception of this profession is that it's a creative field, right? And that you feel that since you have that urge in you, this might be the right match for you. So great. Let's see what this profession holds. So I think to begin any course, you need to understand how do you appreciate it. I, for one, took up this profession because I felt the same thing like you. I really liked science a lot, and I liked physics especially, and I liked maths, but I wasn't too good at it, but I liked it anyway. And of course, drawing was something that I always did, and I drew anything that I came across, I mean, whatever I saw in front of me. So it began with drawing figures as a child, but slowly I just got interested in any form that was in front of me. So for me, this seemed to be a logical choice. And that's why I took up architecture. That's me during Prasabhavani, you might remember me like that. So that's me in my college days in my hostel. And you know, when I took up this course, there were lesser girls than guys. And I mean, I got this old-fashioned sort of, you know, comments that most well-meaning uncles and right? Yeah. So I got these comments, oh, it's a good profession for girls to take up. It's nice once you graduate, you can work from home, or she likes to do interior decoration, so this might be the right thing for you to do and all that. But I mean, I was not fazed by all that, and I felt that if they felt that women have this special skill or this special understanding of aesthetics, why not capitalize on it? But I made sure that I wasn't restricted to only that, and that I understood the science behind the profession. I understood the plumbing, the structures, whatever it requires, systematically working on the profession. So that's the reason I took up as a challenge. Now, of course, it's the whole scenario is different. There are more girls than there are guys in architecture, from what I can see in the audience. So, yeah, there are various levels of appreciation of any art form. For example, it could be music or dance or art or, of course, architecture. For example, the young girls who sang in the morning today, how many of you have learned classical music here? Yeah, there are about 3 or 4 hands I can see. The 2 young girls who sang here, suppose they went to a classical music concert, and suppose I went to a classical music concert along with them. I would enjoy the concert because it's melodious, it's a nice rendering. But the 2 girls who went here, if they went for the concert, their understanding of the concert would be something else, right? Because they've been trained in it and they would identify better with it. They would probably know, like, for example, these 2 girls, I think, sang in Anand Bhairavi, the Ragam. I'm not very sure, am I right? And that's the Ragam. And somebody who understands Mridangam would know what talam goes with that. And so the way they understand is a certain level. They understand the subtleties of it, and also they will be able to critically analyze it. I mean, what they did right, what they did wrong. So what you learn from this, that you have to be able to know it to be able to appreciate it better. I mean, of course, at an emotional level, you might like it, but then to be able to appreciate it, you'll have to learn a bit more. You have to dig a little deeper, right? So that painting, for example, at the first level, it's nice. It's a nice set of colors, put in a grid, and all that. But then, let's try and understand it. This painting is by this famous Dutch artist called Piet Mondrian. And he belonged to this movement called D-Style movement. It was a movement originated in Holland, but then all over Europe it was quite a well-known movement, which used mostly orthogonal grids and primary colors. And it was a move away from a very ornate sort of art. It was a very graphic sort of expression of art. So he belonged to that movement, and he did paintings which were blocks of colors and placed in a grid and primary colors. And when he did this painting, although it's nice at the first level when we look at it, if you try to understand it deeper, the reason he did this was because he lived in various cities like, Paris, London, and New York. But what he liked about New York was it was the only large city with a perfectly orthogonal, gridded master plan. And he felt that totally matched with this style of his paintings. And he thought that, let's interpret it like that. He loved the energy and the pulse of the city, because it's a fast-moving city with the life throughout the day, all the 24 hours of the day. And he felt that this energetic pulse of the city could be represented like this, where the smaller dots are the traffic signals which go off and on, and the larger rectangles are those buildings, bigger and smaller buildings. And the pulse and the traffic of the city is represented when your eye moves through one colored patch to the other, restlessly. So he felt that the energy of New York is represented by a painting like this. So once you understand the reason behind it, you understand the movement called D-style and how the two are brought together in this painting, your level of understanding this painting in the beginning changes and you get deeper into it. So all I'm trying to say is that try to understand anything that you are learning and you'll enjoy it better. This is the city of New York, and now you can see how it sort of is reflected in the painting, right? Those larger buildings and those traffic signals and the grid pattern. So basically, to understand any field, first you have to have a response to it. So you'll have to appreciate it or not, whatever the case is. Appreciate could be that you like or you don't like. So you'll need to have that. So do you, in your daily life, what would be a good idea for you is to observe the spaces in which you live in. For example, it could be the studio where you work right now, or it could be this whole campus, it could be your home, it could be your hostel room, it could be your toilets. I mean, you can critically understand, you can like it or you can not like it. For example, the most used space would be your kitchen or your toilet, and you probably have, I don't like this here, I want this to be this way, that way. You'll have some critical understanding of it, right? Those are all cues for you to develop. So that's the way you build up a vocabulary for yourself. So it's very important that you keep on noticing whatever you come across in your daily life. Observe, that's the main thing. Now, like when you go to an art gallery, this doesn't seem to, yeah. So this is a Renaissance classical painting by this very well-known Dutch painter again called Vermeer, and his skill, I mean, we have seen a lot of Renaissance paintings, classical paintings like this, but this particular painter's skill lies in the fact that he understood light and he understood form. Now that I say this to you, you'll be able to understand that he has particularly chosen a particular direction of light. There's only one window through which light comes, and he's got these complicated forms there. There's this face, which is a sphere, the forehead, and there is this pot that she's holding, and then there are her arms, which are little cylinders actually, interpretations of cylinders. And then he was very good with textures also. So you have a basket there, you have that fruit there, and the woolen outfit that she's wearing. So how do these textures, how has he understood form and texture and how light is picked up by these? So that was his speciality. Once I direct you towards that, you'll probably learn it yourself with time, and you'll even in your, I think you have those classes, right? Fine art or something in your first semester? Basic design. So this is how it's used finally. What you do as, pyramid or a cone or a sphere and you do these renderings, how do you later on use it in life? You could be an artist like this, or you could use it to render your building. So the way you appreciate art or a building in future has to change forever once you go through these courses. So any art form, whenever you see something, there are three primary ways in which you respond. I'm just trying to make it simple for you. So there is the physical. That means it has to solve all your problems. I mean, why you're using it, why you're building it finally, or why you're making any product. It has to solve certain physical problems. And then there's this thing that you like something or you don't like something. So there is that. Let's call it emotional. And then you try to understand why something works and why something doesn't work. You critically analyze it and you understand it. And that is what is a intellectual response to anything that you come across. Valley School that we'd done maybe a decade ago. This is one part of the school which is called the Art Village of Valley School. And you know, they had a typical program requirement. One had to house so many students. There had to be so many classrooms. Each classroom would be having so many students. And there would be so much of faculty, they would have to have rooms, and there would be an amphitheater which should house all of them together, so many toilets, etc., etc. So this would be a line of sight and things like that, you know. So the first set of things that I told you, that so many classrooms, so many students, and this is the space that you have, etc. What is the one thing that's common in what I told you just now? It's numbers. You'll have to deal with numbers in architecture. So you can't just be having a dreamy sort of an idea. You'll have to get down to numbers. You'll have to know so many students need so much space. Both are numbers. Number of students and the amount of space that you give them. So, and you'll have to know how many toilets for so many students, for so much faculty, and what's the ratio. So you better be very, very, very clear about that, whether it's part of your the course agenda, I do not know. But that's something that you have to get down to yourself. So be aware of that. And then there would be the next level of numbers, which would be structurally, is it going to be workable? Which would be like how much span, if I want a larger auditorium, the span has to be so big. So those are numbers too, but then that goes through a level which is services, and those are facts too. Those are functional requirements. They're fact-based. So these are all non-debatable parts of this profession, and these, according to me, come first. So these are what inform your creativity, or these are what inform your design. So do not brush past these, because this is something that's easy. I mean, it's fact-based, it's available, nobody can counter you on that, it's not subjective, it's a totally objective thing. So I would urge the entire program to focus on that, and that also makes you employable, by the way, if you know these figures and facts. And as someone who goes through a lot of resumes, I would really advocate that. Okay, so once you go through this, these are functional requirements, these are fact-based requirements. So you solve the program. Architecture program is nothing but requirements, what the client needs for the building to be functional, right? So once you solve the program, it's only then that you have the luxury of an emotional response, of what you call creative response to your design. So it could be one opinion versus another. So you move to that realm now. So that's first you have to solve these non-tangible, very fact-based things, and then you have the luxury of moving on to your own creative ideas that you might have. But those are not just fantasy, those have to be informed by facts, right? So for a building to work. Now let's see how that works. Let's look at emotional responses. There are things that you like, that you don't like. So that's I would say that whenever you move through life, keep making these observations. Say, I like this, I don't like. At least start with opinions, right? So, take this space, for example. I would just walk past it in the beginning, but as you get more and more into this profession, you'll start having opinions and critical mostly. You'll mostly not like things, okay? So take this. It's a working office, right? There are people sitting there working. They have their own tables. They have they have all the requirements to plug in a computer. There's sufficient light. It houses so many people. You can move around. Fine. There's nothing wrong with it really at the first look of it. But the same number of people could be housed in a place like this. So, do you see what would be your first response? Do you see a difference? I would say, and then now you have to analyze what is the difference. Here I would say, for example, just to give you a cue, there's visual communication between the people who are going to be working here. They can relate to one another. There's a sense of equality, there's a sense of democracy, there's a sense of team working together. There's certain openness, there's no sort of I'm not along with you kind of a feeling. And there's a easy communication and there's order too. And like for example on the right, those are meeting rooms, but you can see what's happening in the meeting room if you're one of the people working here. Those are probably cabins in the corner. You can see what's happening. So there's a sense of involvement of everybody. There's no hierarchy, not that much of a hierarchy. So these are things that you'll have to devise for yourself, right? Take this building, for example. It's fine. It's a neatly done building, right? There's glass, there's a lot of light, and modern materials. There's a worked out landscape. The building over, there's a formality. You enter this building, everything looks fine. But on the other hand, take a building like this. This Nirlaw Knowledge Park that we did in Navi Mumbai. And this is also an office building, which works. But then look at the open spaces. How there's a hierarchy in the open spaces. There are community spaces where people could spill over. There's smaller spaces which open into this large space. And look at the interface, the threshold between the building and the open space. There are these colonnades from which people can look from, and terraces from where people can stand out and look into the garden. So the participation of the people with the garden, there's a bit more involvement of the people with the garden. So these are factors that you'll probably devise with time. So there's a transition between the inside and the outside, right? This is the same landscape. Here you can see that it's the people that are the focus. They are the protagonists. It's meant for usage. It's meant for the people of in the workspace to enjoy. It's not to make a statement necessarily for someone who comes like it's a grand building, but it's for the people who are working there to enjoy. That's the sense that you might get going to a place like this. So there are subtle differences in how your approach to any design problem could be. So this is just what we spoke about, is just the emotional responses which set you thinking. So let's try and move to the next thing. Why do these spaces look like this, and why is your emotional response different in one building scenario to the other? I would like you to see this building, for example. Here, there's a classroom here. There's a lab here, and there's a seminar hall on the left side here. And this is the connecting point. Can you hear me? This is a connecting corridor between the two, and that link is sort of vitalized by the presence of this tree, and therefore capitalizing on that tree, and we're having another classroom here between two functional spaces. You're creating another functional space which is not part of the official program. So there is that deviation that you can make. But at the same time, you are not compromising on what is required by the school. You need a lab, you need that functional space, you need this seminar hall, it has to be a closed space. but you can also create your own thing. So what I'm trying to say is that you have a very, you have to follow what is part of the program without compromising on that. You have to weave in your ideas. And that's how you make successful architecture. You don't do one at the cost of another, right? This is a similar sort of a response for a larger building. This is St. Joseph's College of Arts and Science, if you get a chance to go near Richmond Circle. This is a building which, again, you have sort of all the classrooms are here, and there's a library here, and this is a linking space with an old building there at the back, existing old building. So how are they all woven together around this beautiful tree? So it's vitalized. I mean, you understand that students are going to be hanging around between the classrooms and the library quite often. So you make them see the old building, you make them see the tree, you make them hang around there, and that's how you have a successful space. Now, there are elements in architecture which you have to be observant enough to pick up on. Typically, you have floors and you have classrooms. So you have this horizontal separating of spaces and you have this vertical separation of spaces. But there's this one thing which I find is always very interesting, which is this diagonal element, and that's only the staircase, right? Nowadays, you do have elevators, but then the staircase is the only thing which is a diagonal element. How do you make use of that as an aesthetic element, as a functional element, and everything that goes in between? So you've got to create vocabularies for yourself. Yeah, so I leave it to you now to analyze the space. So whatever visual you see now, you'll have to pick up on it and analyze it, and that should be your pursuit all the time. So you just cannot leave a visual scene by itself. You'll have to start analyzing it. It could be anything from a small little spoon to the garden around you, to the street around you, to your bedroom. It could be of any scale. Like, for example, when I bought this bangle several years ago in Gujarat, what I liked about it was that it was oval. It's not round. And it had this opening. And that means they've understood the program very well. Any wrist is not round. It's kind of flat in this dimension and wider in this dimension. And if you didn't want to have a hinge which, so you still want a bangle which snugly fits around your wrist, but you don't want a hinge and a screw to fix it. The only way is to make use of these two dimensions. Turn it around, slip it in, and then turn your wrist around. How well does it solve the design problem? It states the problem that you don't want a screw, but you want it to fit in snugly, and you solve it. So even this is design. That's what I would like you to understand. The smallest scale to the largest. It could be a spoon, a ladle, and how a certain ladle works for a certain kind of food, whereas another one doesn't work. Right? A spoon won't work if you have a full vessel of rasam. You'll have to have a particular kind of a ladle for that. So all that is design. This is a workspace that we did for a factory which there had a lot of software work which does a lot of intellectual security was required. But at the same time, you'd have to have visitors who come in who want to admire the kind of people who are working there, you want to show off a bit. But at the same time, there's a lot of security of all the intellectual property that's going on there. So this is the visitors' viewing space. They came here for meetings. This is the meeting room, which are part of this, but which are also away from it. And they really can't see what's going on here, can't hear what's going on there, but then they are still witness to it. And these people also feel good that there are people coming to see them. And the space looks even better because of this element that's introduced. So we capitalize on the program and the dictates of the clients too. So you'll have to solve their problems, but you should have your own hidden creative agenda. So what exactly is architecture then, finally? It's all this and much more. Let's see. the finest detail. This is just a gate, and that's the locking mechanism for the gate. That happens, here and here. It's a blown up of that, and it's how it's fixed out here onto the wall. This is a blow up of that. So you understand 35 mm, which is only so much, and you understand a master plan at the same time. So it's a bit like Vishwarupa Darshanam. I don't know if you know that. You from the smallest to the biggest, you have to have that perspective all the time. It's how those details sit together in a larger context. It could be in a compound wall, it could be for a window, it could be an entire house, it could be the interior of a house. How does light come in? How do you work around nature? How do you work around light? It could be a master plan. So you have all these functional requirements which have to be housed in discrete buildings, but how the space between the buildings also have to make sense. You'll have to have spaces between which I want to do that. So you have these spaces in between also, this is still a work in progress at that time when we took this picture, but all these spaces were all curated, specifically created. Even the negative spaces between the buildings are something that you deliberately work on. It's not just it's a leftover space after you design something. So at master plan level also you'll have to have a deliberate idea and an understanding of interiors of buildings. That's architecture. And once, you have your own practice, you do buildings for private clients, but you've also got to give back to society, right? And this is the city that has provided you the opportunity to build all that. So what do you give back to the city? This is a project that we did called Church Street Redevelopment. You might have all been part of this, as gone through this on a weekend. So the Church Street in the city was, I know you guys might be too young, but about 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it was a complete mess. The sewage, the rainwater, the electrical cables, the data, and the telephone lines, everything was jumbled up, and it was just working by friction. It was just held together, it was just continued to just go along, but it was a mess. And as any citizen would be who's concerned about the city, it has to hit you that there's something that can be done to this. And then it has to hit you that identify the problem, what are the things that are wrong with the city, and how do we right those wrongs? And how do we go about it? So you first it's a coming together of all that. It's your first observation, and then your emotional response if this is not right. And then the intellectual response as to what exactly is wrong, if I do what, will these things be corrected? So it was not just a superficial idea of I just do like this Church Street. It was also that what is it? And the way it was analyzed was that let's sort out the utilities of the street, and then the street will become good by itself. How do you rationalize the traffic? How do you deal with the utilities? And how do you make the pedestrians feel comfortable? How do you make driving comfortable? How do you make parking comfortable? And everything had to be very systematically made into a program and worked out. It was not just an emotional response. You had to be very systematic. So the sooner you learn in your course, along with your faculty, that you have to have a very systematic approach to design, a very functional, systematic, programmatic approach to design, the better it is for you. Your design need not be fantastic, it just has to be good. Yeah, this was a prototype that we did, and then the government, that's another part of the design, so how do you work with the politicians? How do you work with the bureaucrats? How do you make them see eye to eye? Is there a win-win? Like we could tell the politicians, it's good for you, it's your constituency, you probably will get more votes, and this is one thing that you can, you have to be subtle about it, but you have to do, that's design too, Everything is design, finally. I'm sorry, this is another project that, how many of you are familiar with this city and who know? Most of the cosmopolitan cities, and most of the cities in the world really, are always, they have a water source, right? New York, it has there's a river, there's a water body next to it, there's a sea next to it. There's London with the River Thames, there is Madras which has the sea next to it, and any city, Bombay or anything, there's always a water. But Bangalore, and probably Delhi also had Yamuna, but then Bangalore is the one city which does not have a source of water running through it. So, but what made Bangalore a popular place? Why did it historically become such a sought after place? It's the lakes of Bangalore. It was, the city is elevated, you know it's at an elevation, right? But then, so they had these keres, as they call it, those keres, those lakes of Bangalore were the water source of Bangalore. And they were created such that each lake was connected to the other by these nalas or channels of water. So Bangalore was a very beautiful functioning city. But with time and with the demand in real estate and with the utilities being jumbled up with those nalas, those beautiful water sources and those nalas were also source of a place where the sewage was let into, the rainwater was let into. So the beauty of it was all lost. So we realized that there has to be something that has to be done now instead of just lamenting the problem. And so, I mean, there are a lot of talks with the government. So we have this mod, it's an urban design studio in our office. So we've had a lot of talks with the government and all that. And this finally, after several years of negotiating and dealing with them, that we came up with this pilot project which actually could happen. And this is near the BMTC bus stand on Double Road. So this was called the K100, that is one nala. Each nala has got a number also. So it's called the K100 nala, which we felt that instead of relegating it as a channel for sewage like Madras's Kuam River, we thought that why not turn it around, and that could be the space where people hang out, you know. It could be, there's a bus stand there, people will be waiting for, it's a busy street also. So that could be vitalized, make it, separate the sewage from the rainwater, and the rainwater can be a beautiful element, landscape element around which people could sit around. So that was a vision, that's an emotional response, all right, but how do we go about it? So there was a lot of work behind it, and finally we were able to achieve this. The same stinking nala was made into this, you can see the nala runs here, but the space around it was created, and now it's quite a used thing. Once the trees grow, it's going to be quite something. And from here you can see the space, and it's something. The Ahmedabad Sabarmati project. There are lots of projects like that where the architects work back with the city and try to. If you have the skill to negotiate with the authorities, it can happen. But it's a lot of, and it's tenuous. It's a hard work, and you really have to have the resilience to be able to do something like that. So you need to know how to tackle various factors, but you will with age, I suppose. So architecture, like I've just taken you through a quick ride of architecture. It's from the smallest to the largest. It's all of that. But let's understand what architecture is not. You probably have been told, architecture is. Sorry. Yeah. So it's both have this creative turn to them, but there is a difference, right? Architecture is a very rational procedure. It's functional art, and it's really not about your personal expression all the time. You might have a personal expression, but that is as a solution to some problem that you've identified. And how you solve the problem, that is where your personal expression comes. So there is that responsibility that architecture goes with. So it's better to be informed that architecture really is not art. It's not a place to fantasize. It's a place to actually build something responsibly. You may have been told that it's like sculpture. Well, yeah, both are three-dimensional, fine. But then architecture solves a problem, and aesthetically. That's the difference. Architecture deals with tangibles. That's what we did. There are numbers, there are functions, there are requirements that you have to deal with. Architects deal with measurables, like a site, its climate, technology, people, and structure, and bylaws. And now Vastu, like Sir Nandkumar was just telling me, you have all these things that architecture has to deal with. These are all tangibles, and you're answerable to that. So the sooner you realize that the luxury of dreaming only comes after you solve these problems, you'll stand in good stead then. Yeah, now it is. So, you might have been told, follow your dream, pursue your passion. Sure. But then, before you do that, acquire knowledge to appreciate, understand, and to come up with ideas, right? Like we've gone through the earlier slides. Develop skills. This is the place you develop skills. Don't just have a fantastic idea. Learn how to represent it. Learn to draw. Learn to measure. Learn to draw to scale. Learn hand drawing. Later on you can learn digital representation, but learn. Skills are the most important. Learn to render. Learn how light falls on a building. Everything is a skill, but you have to be skilled. So develop skills, develop discipline. If you have an idea, learn to put it on paper. Learn to format. Learn visual communication. Don't crowd your sheet with information just because you worked all night. Learn what is the value of open space, white space to information. Learn how to present your work. Learn to prioritize. These are things that you will have to learn. And passion will then just follow. Once you learn skills, passion is it just has to follow. The word passion is quite nebulous. Stay away from it. It will just happen. But work on your skills first. I'm sorry. Why is it that only architects think they can straight away be this fantastic Zaha Hadid? I do not know. Right in the first year. A musician doesn't think like that. Those young ladies who made that beautiful dance performance, they've learned their adabus, they've learned their mudras, and each one like a pataka or a suchi, whatever, I don't know classic dance really, but they know all that and they put all that together. That's the vocabulary of dance, right? And they put all that together to make a dance recital which could tell any story. So that's the vocabulary of dance. So architecture too has a vocabulary. It's just that it's not being called that all these days. You moved from a written media of words and all that in school, but now you're moving on to a visual medium. And you have to develop your visual vocabulary and your skill vocabulary. You have to learn a whole new set of skills and quickly at that. 5 years is just not enough for that. So just like for music, you start with the swaras. You have to completely master the swaras. Just like in architecture, you have to completely master the drawing of a line, the intersection of lines. How do you know how much space so many people need? What is the dimension of the site? Don't make any drawing without numbers. Make sure you have the site dimensions. Make sure you have the building dimensions, setbacks. All that numbers are the most important things. Do not bypass that and come up with a fantastic drawing. I do not respect it at all. So this young musician from Bangalore, I don't know if many of you know Karna. I know him since he was a small child and he was really learning at that time. And he didn't know what his future would hold for him. But with time now, he's quite a talented and sought after musician. With time, you only then can you become a musician like this. And he too was talented. Certainly he was a genius, Bhimsen Joshi, but then he had the fortune of the environment in which he lived in, where everyone was playing music and he imbibed it. But not all of us have that luxury. And my contention is that don't let anybody tell you that you're not creative, you're not really a talented person. Everything can be learned. It's a profession, even art. It's a skill that you can learn. Only thing is that you should be interested enough to apply yourself and to have someone make you interested in it. And then you can become good at it. It's like any sport or anything, everything can be learned. So, I'm sorry. These are all things that architecture is. Creative, as you can see, is the last thing there. All that happens, creativity follows. If you solve all that, you will reach that. I mean, you have to develop skills, like I said, your emotional responses, all that will happen. And that will contribute to your creativity, right? What are those skills, roughly? Let's look at that. You have to learn how to make representational sketches, thinking sketches. Every time you think, you need to know how to make your thinking also visible. It has to be a visual act of thinking, right? It has to be a different way of thinking. While you're studying, you'll probably make notes. In your 11th and your 12th, you probably did that. You made notes and you made charts and you made spreadsheets. But in architecture, you learn like this. This is how you make notes. Whatever you see, you make observational drawings like this. This was when I was much younger. We went to Ahmedabad NIT. You're familiar with that building, right? So the moment you go there, I mean, you might like the building, wow, and all that, but after that you'll have to try to, memorize the building and put it on paper. And what about that building that you liked? You'll have to understand it and at least put it on paper, and then you can figure out that these were the proportions, this was the way it was gridded, this was the kind of ceiling or open space that it had, which made this space look good. So you create your vocabulary and then you do it yourself. So you've got to have a handbook which you keep using to sketch. That's why you make those study trips. That's why you have sketching classes. It's not just to make a beautiful looking, drawing. It's to understand. So sketching has to have a purpose. And then, unless you develop skills, all those ideas will remain latent and frozen in your head. You'll have to put it on paper and communicate it to somebody, communicate it to yourself for you to understand. So you'll have to learn skills. So any idea, then it's easy for you to put it on paper, and then you get this sense of, catharsis, a kind of relief that you've been able to capture your, whimsical of, fluid thoughts on paper. This was I think this was the Art Village, which, really it was a pro bono project that our office did for Valley School, and so we really couldn't afford people to draft it and all that. So this was hand drawn by me, and communicate all the important dimensions were just hand drawn and given. It can be done, but numbers. I'd like you to just focus on the numbers. Everything is a number. All these things. At what height do we want this? How big? If the wall is so big, where do we want these granite slabs to be? How do you want to divide this whole, plane? At what levels do you want these things to be divided? How do you maintain continuity in this granite slab? What is a sill here becomes just a jam detail here. And, things like that. What is a sill here becomes a jam detail here. So these are aesthetics with dimensions all the time. It's not just aesthetics, it's not just purely engineering, it's both. So you learn architectural representation with time. These were days before AutoCAD. So all drawings were, whatever you felt, you just made sketches. And then the visual, the digital medium, how do you make use of that too? There's nothing wrong with it, it's perfectly right, it makes it easier. But then you have to have the germ of an idea, and you should know what your drawing should look like finally. Only then can you use the digital medium. You have faculty here. I think I met Professor Gautam, who's great at this. I mean, you should make use of him. This is the Valley School Science Center handbook. This is my watchword. Don't try to be fantastic. Don't try to create something out of this world all the time. Just be good. Fantastic will follow. Thank you, everybody.